Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. Alright, hello friends and welcome to my July wrap up, and I'm so excited to talk to you about my stats and my favorites for July and a little bit of just wrapping up July because wow, I did so much and honestly it was all so much fun. Like all my favorite things of the year, I think. Maybe that's being dramatic. I don't know. A lot of my favorite things that I had going on, at least for the summer months, were all in July. And so it was pretty packed. But somehow I think I still, did I have one of the double weeks that was in July? I don't know. I should have checked beforehand because now I can't check it on here. But I think this summer, maybe I had to do one double week, but normally during the summer I have to do multiple times, or I have to do double weekly wrap-ups, and I think I maybe only had to do that once this time, and I don't think I'll have to do it again. Yeah, I do think I had to do it once. I think I had to do it once at the very beginning of July when I had camp, when that was the holdover for June and July, yeah, when we had camp. But this year camp was funny because it was at the end of June instead of the beginning of July. My second family, or my like friend family that I go to a family camp with, we had it at the end of June instead of beginning of July. But then some other fun things. Sorry, let me get into more of the intro before I just dive right in. I'm so excited to talk about everything. Hold on, let me have a bit more of my caffeine, even though that'll make me talk. So yeah, let me let you know what's going to be in this video. Hi, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for stumbling across this. What I'm going to go through in this video, I'm going to go through some of the highlights of the month, some of the fun things. Then I'm going to go over my stats for the month, just very briefly about, you know, like the, ratings, the subgenres, the types, the styles of media that I read, things like that. And then I will talk about the top reads that I read. I do weekly wrap-ups. That's what I was kind of referring to just then about if I had to do any double weekly wrap-ups, because I read between lately it's been between 6 to 10, it just depends, things every week. And so I talk about them every week. So you can watch those up here. So far I just did the 31st. So I have 31 about weekly wrap-ups, right? I think I've had 3 double ones, so there's, probably 29 weekly wrap-ups. So you can go check those out if you want more in-depth discussions about all the books that I read. You can check those out there. But on the weekly wrap-ups, I just like to talk about my favorites, or the monthly wrap-ups, I just like to talk about my favorites because I really like this to be a really happy time. But I'm also going to talk about a bit about how things are working for me, and I'm really excited to do that because when I did my August TBR, I was reflecting a bit about some goals that I'd made for July because I was carrying over some of those goals into August. But now I'm fully going to reflect on some of the goals that I made for July because I carried through on a few of those things. And so I'm going to discuss some of those reflections. But yeah, that's what we're going to talk about in this one. So yeah, if you want to scroll through till I'm talking about my actual favorites, you can do that. But before you do that, if you would, I've watched a few videos now where some bigger creators I follow, not necessarily even in the bookish space, but I have seen this from YouTube say that as well, that what YouTube right now is doing, I know this is the boring stuff, it really is, but if you enjoy what I do, and not just me, for anyone that you love, and you're wondering why you don't see them doing as well, or you hear us doing a bit of whinging, as they say in other places of the world too, about how our stuff is doing, it's because I guess right now YouTube does this, they're cyclical about how they do it. If we complain about it enough, they'll change, but first they give us hype points, we're seeing with hype points per working, whatever, but it does appear that it is collective interactions that are what's boosting our videos. So if you're someone who watches on your TV so you can't comment, if you could please like this video, you can like a video from any device now. You can do that even if you're watching on your TV by using your remote and just clicking over to the like part of it. If you were subscribed to my channel, but you found you're unsubscribed, again, only if you want to be subscribed. You don't have to. If you don't want to, if you're not liking the content I bring to you, that's totally fine too. You just want to check this out. because you want to see what the book refuge has been up to. That's totally fine. But even better than that too, if once we get into some of the discussion part about the books I'm going to talk about, and you're watching on your phone or your laptop and you are able to comment, even if you just leave some emojis for me with some beautiful sunshine or flowers or whatever, that all helps, because it's collectively the interactions right now, which are comments, likes, hypes, that are helping the videos. So please, 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 if you could do that, that would help me so much. So anyway, that's enough begging for that. And of course, the very highest form of that, which is very, very helpful, if you'd like to support my channel monetarily, I have channel memberships and Patreon, which you can even follow my Patreon for free. And that is always a really great way too to know first what's going on, because I do post some updates and things over there that are available for anyone to see. Okay, enough. All right, because we got fun stuff. So, like I said, some of the goals that I put about for myself that weren't really like, oh, you have to do this. They were about opening things up. I was feeling very constricted by TBRs, because I do have pretty hefty TBRs between things I need to do for work, which my Patreon is work. You know, I'm a full-time creator and I love doing this so much, but there are still parts of it that are work, and I'm so blessed that whatever. We don't have to go into all that part. You guys know that. You know that. We do. But something I wanted to do for myself in July, I'd mentioned it in the TBR, was to allow myself some freedom with revisiting some childhood favorites, just allowing myself to be a bit freer with things, because this year I have been really free with letting myself read a lot of fan fiction. That's really been what my outlet has been. And I mean, I still have been letting myself do that. And I mean, you'll see that with what I read. But I just wanted to give myself some more freedom in other places too. And I feel like that really was successful. And again, I think you're going to see that in my stats section because of such a wide range of subgenres that I read, which was so cool. Part of that had to do with books that were picked by patrons, because a couple of my patron books were in a very wide variety. Also, with some of the releases that were coming out that I read arcs of were in very wide varieties. But I also read 2 non-romances, which I will mention because both of them ended up being 5-star reads that were non-romances this month. So one of them I'll mention because it was a reread, and the other one is actually in my top 5 of the month, so I'm going to talk about it in that part of the video. But the other one was a reread, and I reread Hatchet, which was wonderful. And I'm actually continuing that, which I talked about in my August TBR. I'm going to be continuing rereading the Hatchet sagas, I guess what it's called, or the Hatchet series, or I always called it the Brian saga when I was young. And I loved revisiting that. I just gave myself one night earlier in July where I just let myself enjoy being back in the wilderness with Brian. And it was so cool to do that. And it just reminded me what type of books I read as a young adult, and then into even my romance reading life that I read because of Hatchet. And I know I've talked about that at different times, like fully my love of survival romance. I believe my love of dystopian and apocalypse romance actually truly came from Hatchet. That, you know, man versus wild, that survival, that human spirit. And though I talk about in a weekly wrap up when I reread Hatchet about how it was difficult reading a child being in that, I know when I was a kid, that was so inspiring. You know, there was a lot of books I read at that time searching for books that were survival like that. And being a kid and thinking that, ooh, could I make it if this happened to me? You know, I was a only child myself, and so that led to a lot of adventures on my family farm of, you know, going just barely into the woods and, oh my gosh, could I survive here? And the answer is no, you couldn't. But, you know, it just led to so many things when I was a kid. And then it led into other books that I read. And yeah, it was really fun. So I loved that. I also did end up reading some of the other ones from that, like I did end up early reading My Highland Rogue, which that is also on a TBR for, it was going to be on my August TBR anyway, but I had put it earlier where like I wanted the time to get to it without being rushed, and I did. That's going to be for Rake Appreciation Society as well. Let's see, were there any other ones too? Oh yeah, I'm going to talk about it in my favorites because it ended up being a favorite. So we'll talk about that one then. So yeah, I just really let myself get there. And then also, I mentioned this first, there were so many fun things I had going on in July. And so at the very beginning of the month, I tried to push myself to get to more of my Patreon reads earlier in the month. And I did really good with that. So much so that lately I've been having so many Patreon books carry over into the next month. And at this point, I only still have 2 July books that I have to get to. Which, I mean, I know it's still already August, but you guys just don't understand how much those have been like piling up with me. And my patrons have been so kind to not make me feel the pressure from that. But me, someone who likes to be on top of everything, I have been feeling the pressure of that. And then that just makes me more stressed. And it's caused me to not enjoy those books as much as I want to. Because some of the books my patrons have led me to have been amazing. And you're going to see that in my favorites because Patreon books from I guess they both were from her, actually. A Patreon book from June and July for one of my patrons were my favorite books of July. And so when I have the time to read those and I'm not being rushed into them, they've been some of my favorites. So yeah, they're books I never would have tried otherwise, you know. And anyway, sorry, I'm probably just all over the place. Little bit of brain fog. I had a migraine yesterday, so I'm coming a bit out of the brain fog of that too. So trying to be articulate with this is difficult. But the point is that I want to keep the joy of reading in it. That's something that I have to actively choose to do because I can't just get lost in the fog. But anyway, so the other fun events that I did, that's where I was going with this. See, keep on track. In July, there was a shower for my friend Sarah. Her baby's coming in October. Then there was an event where my sister and my nieces came to visit here. That was really fun. We went to some different places here in Fargo. Then there was a birthday party for my cousin's twins that I went to. Then there was my trip with Sarah to a town that's only an hour away from here, which actually got some fun things. I got these are actually Lainey Wilson, if you guys know that singer, her jewelry line. I got these cute little spur earrings, which made me so happy, and you'll see why. My favorites of the month, I have 2 different cowboy romances, so I felt like these were very appropriate to wear today. I just love them, and surprisingly, they are not as pokey as they seem because they really don't touch your ear at all. I love them. I also got another follow bracelet, and this one is for a whale named Steinar. I love these follow bracelets. You're supporting good causes as well as you get cool bracelets. You might see me, I'm pretty much always wear one in a video. I have many different ones now, but they actually had them where you could pick them when we were there. So Sarah and I went on that little trip, and we listened to a book together, which I will talk about because it was one of my favorites. If you listen to my weekly wrap up from then, you'll know which one I mean, but we'll talk about it soon. Then there was a crafters retreat, of which I've been working on. If I'll remember, I'll show it here. This Pride and Prejudice cross stitch, which I'm still not finished yet. That'll probably be in my August wrap up. I'm not going to show it yet because I'm really close to being done with it. So I'll just show you progress that one of my most recent progress pictures that I took, but now it's getting close to being done, and so I don't want to show it until it's actually done. But I had a crafters retreat with the ladies from my church, and I love going to those, you guys know. And yes, I do plan to do another craftathon. I'm thinking of doing it probably, I don't know, probably in November again. I just feel like that was a good time, maybe the beginning of November. So it's like after Halloween, because there's always some kind of like monster-a-thon or like Halloween stuff happening in October. So maybe like the beginning of November before holiday stuff and everything. but you guys let me know what you think. I loved it because also I have crafters retreats in September and October. So I would really enjoy having like a crafters retreat September, October, and then one in November. So we had those. And then this last Saturday, I had another shower for Sarah. So there was so much going on in July. But somehow I still happen to have one of my best reading months. Because again, I was just really kind of letting myself get drawn to places. And I thought that I must have had so many audiobooks. But really, I didn't have any more than normal. It was a vast majority of ebooks and physical books, which is just crazy to me. It's just crazy to me. I did a lot of reading sprints actually myself, between doing a sprint and then doing some cross stitching. It's very interesting. I'll maybe explain it another time, but I was doing these sprints of like, I would do one thread, you know, like I would do one thread and then I would read 50 pages and I'd do one thread and read 50 pages. And I can't tell you, I got through so many of my physical books that way. But I thought there would have been more audiobooks that I got through than I did. So it's very interesting. But anyway, that's the like things that I was doing. So it was just very interesting to me that by letting myself be just a little more free with some things, I still was able to get through so much of what I needed to. You know, like I said, I only have 2 left of my, Patreon read, whereas in the past couple months when I was doing my monthly wrap up, I still had like all of them left to do. And I was feeling so behind on everything, and feeling so guilty over it. And, you know, I don't know. I just feel like that was really the ticket. Now, will I always be able to do it this way? I don't know. August again feels pretty stacked. It's another month where I felt like I wasn't overdoing it. And then all of a sudden there's a bunch of arcs stacked up. But again, I'm going to do the same thing where I'm like, no, I'm not going to prioritize what I don't want to. I'm going to prioritize my Patreon reads, the ones that I'm excited about. You know, I still have another book club book to get. I'm going to, you know, work on I want to read Brian's Winter whenever I want. There are a few of the arcs that I really want to get to, you know, like Sierra Simone's is coming. There's also a couple that I haven't got to from July yet that I still want to. The Gabrielle Sands and the Eliza MacArthur. I just hadn't got to those ones yet. So I want to get to those when I want to. But yeah, I want to like prioritize those things. So let's get into the stats and everything and get into my faves because we've taken enough time in the beginning of this. But, oh yeah, I forgot one other thing to mention. I also was able to do a vlog, which that will be coming on Thursday. I know I teased that in a weekly wrap up. And the thing is, that wasn't a favorite read of the month. So I'm not going to be talking about that in the 5 books I'm going to talk about. And it also, you know, I didn't really talk about it in my weekly wrap up. So because it ended up not being a fave, you know, if you saw my weekly wrap up, I believe I tell you what I read it. Maybe I didn't. But I did do a very, very long reading vlog for 2 Wrongs by Sam Mariano. And I didn't end up completely loving that book. However, the first 15 minutes of that video are non-spoilers. Now the tagline of the video, like, won't say that. I did say that it was a spoiler vlog because the vast majority of the video is spoilers. But the first 15 minutes are a intro to the book and a non-spoiler. And I do say what my rating is and all that. And that is coming on Thursday. It's currently in a pre-release for channel members and Patreon. So if you're one of those, you can go and watch that now. And again, I don't have like bad things to say about it. And it was such a fun reading experience. And I'm so glad I vlogged it. And I had so many theories about what was going on. And Sam Mariano, damn, she knows how to write a book. So even though it ended up not being like a new Untouchable or like a new favorite of mine, I'm so glad I vlogged it because she just gives you a reading experience like no other. But I wanted to address that because some of you will know that I read that book and maybe be surprised it's not going to be in my favorites. But it has its own video. It's coming out on Thursday. And even if you don't want the spoilers because you're going to read it yourself or whatever, you can safely watch the first like 15 minutes. And when it switches to spoilers, there's a big old warning and you'll be able to check out of that and then come back once you get to read it. So, yeah, I hope you'll enjoy that. But anyway, let's get into my stack. So in July, I actually read 31 books, which puts me up to 214 for the year, which means I guess I do have to, I thought I'd updated that back there, but I got to update that, which puts me at 214 for the year. But that, and it was 10,189 pages. And that's about, I was going to say that that was higher for the year, but it's about average. I mean, the lowest that I've read on a month was 28. So I read a book a day, which is what my normal average usually is. So yeah, I read about a book a day every day in July. The formats that I read was I had 4 ALCs, 2 ARCs, 3 audiobooks, 14 ebooks, and 17 physical books. So that's what I meant. There was a heck of a lot. Now, as always, I'll remember some of those overlap because I sometimes have the physical book and the audiobook, or I have like an e-ARC and an ALC of books. The subgenres of these books. This is where what I mean. This is the biggest range that I think I've had all year. Like truly, I should go, let me see. April was the month that I read the most books. And even in April, I only had 7 different subgenres because in April I read half of those were fanfics in April. Like literally, I read 34 books in April, but half of them were fanfics. And anyway, in July, I had 8 contemporary, 4 dark, 1 dystopian, 8 fanfics, 2 fantasy, 2 historical, 1 paranormal, 3 suspense, and 2 non-romance. And again, one of those was the Hatchet, and one of those is the other one I'm about to talk about. And then the ratings of these books was also a pretty tight, grouping. I had 5 5 stars, 4 4.5 stars, 13 4 stars, 6 3.5 stars, and 3 3 stars. And again, I have to show off my thing here because I absolutely love how my July looks here. I made these like little cutouts for the numbers, but anywho, all right, now let's talk about my faves. The first book that I picked here was Hollow by M.L. Burns, but this was Keone and Aiden, and they were our stepbrothers. And what was so, oh, this was so good. Okay, there's so much to get into with this one, and like I mentioned near the beginning, as I'm now stumbling through words with this, so I'm sorry about that you're getting brain fog, Jen, today, a day after a migraine, is, those of you who have them, you know. But their actual relationship is not where it's dark in this one. The world they're in is pretty heavy, and it's beginning actually with their parents have died, and it was Auden, sorry, I said Aiden. Is it Aiden? Is it Aiden or Auden? Aiden? I think it's Aiden. Now I don't even remember how to say his name. But Aiden has a sister, and they had the dad, and Keone had a mom. And their parents met when they were all like still in high school. And just as Keone and Aiden were meeting one another, their parents had actually met and didn't know that their kids had met. And so just as they were kind of starting to flirt and like each other, they discover that their parents are like gonna get engaged. And so that kind of made things awkward. But then Keone was away at school because I think he's like 2, 3, I don't know how many years. He's a couple years older. And so for the most part, he was like away at school. But then something happened where he was back for, I don't know, Christmas or whatever. And there was maybe something between them. And then when they kissed one another, one of them freaked out. I think it was Keone who freaked out because he's like, this isn't going to be accepted well. And so he pushed him away and they went their separate ways. And anyway, Aiden ends up dating this absolute slime ball. But unfortunately, this slime ball that he connects with is in law enforcement. And Aiden ends up in the nursing field. And he ends up living away from his family, and slowly but methodically, this is an abusive person, and he separates Aiden from his family. But Keone thinks it's because of him kissing him and then rejecting him. And so he internalizes the separation as like, oh, he doesn't want to be around me anymore. I misread this, or he's hurt that I rejected him. However, once their parents die in an accident, and they end up both at the family cabin, which Aiden uses as finally a refuge and a place to get away from his abuser. They finally have this chance to make things right, but Aiden doesn't know how to break down or break through all of the gaslighting and abuse that he's lived through. And Keone's just pissed because he thinks his stepbrother took this one kiss / misunderstanding or what. He's like, fine, if you didn't really like me, but you were hurting our family by not coming to all of our family get-togethers. And Keone doesn't realize that, yeah, he wasn't coming to those get-togethers because he was being abused and kept away from y'all by his abuser. And the only way he was able to get away was because he had the excuse that their parents died. And so he's in this tough position of he's heartbroken that he lost his mother and a stepfather who he loved, but also he finally has a place to go because there's a home that's open and also a good reason to leave, like bereavement leave to get away. But also his ex, who he's trying to stay away from, has long-reaching fingers and a brotherhood of law enforcement, and it's just this awful toxic thing. So anyway, there's a lot going into this. There are a great use of flashbacks. You guys know how picky I am about those, and it's used very skillfully and very well because a few people are unreliable narrators, as well as there are just situations that they both saw things differently of. So very skillful use of it, and I really enjoyed it. And what I learned is this is the second book in a series, and I am actually going to be reading Heavy in August. So I'm very excited to do that. Though I know that one's about a different couple, and I know that one's quite a bit darker, like the actual relationship's darker. I think that one's a forbidden like step uncle and niece or something like that. But I don't care. I'm so excited. I love how this writer writes. So, and I'm perfectly willing to read a very taboo, forbidden one. But this one, again, the relationship between them is quite sweet. It's just very dark for what this abuser did. And then also they're dealing with grief and mental health. And Aiden's in a very sad place too. And also, so is Keone. Keone. Because there's stuff that he was dealing with too. So it's all a mess. But anyway, I absolutely loved that one. This was a cowboy romance, definitely a lot lighter, though there was still maybe some stalking going on in it. Was Take My Kiss by Brooke Montgomery. Definitely a shift here. This one was book 3 in her series here. I've been working my way through this one for this patron. And this one actually begins with another like one night stand, which I will say Brooke Montgomery likes to use those. I will say that. However, though at the beginning of this, I was like, oh no, this is starting the way all of these start. What's this one going to be? I was pleasantly surprised. And this ended up being my favorite that I'd read from her in quite a while. Like, the first two in this series were just sweet. Like, they were fine. They were standard from this author. This one was exceptional. I really enjoyed it because this one was a single mom, and I believe it's even a reverse age gap. Like, she's a bit older than him. Yeah, they have a one-night stand at a wedding, and she bailed before he got up because she was really kind of having, you know, a free night away from the kids. But she's a single mom of two. She has her priorities, and it was just a fun night. But then when she's starting to come across a man who follows her and her son home from the grocery store, she's feeling threatened. And so she has a friend who, I think this ends up being the like sister to the hero. I can't quite remember here. Let's see. This is Colt and Amelia. And I think it's Colt's sister. Whoa. That's not what I meant to do. I think it's Colt's sister. But anyway, they offer her a place to stay with her kids and like a job to do for them, to get her out of where the person followed her home to, basically. And she thinks they're offering her one of their like guest cabins. Cause again, this like family owns a resort and everything. And they're like, no, he was offering you to stay at his house with him for protection. And it ends up being Colt's home. And she's like, oh man, I'm living in his house. The hot guy that I hooked up with, like, I'm screwed, basically, type of thing. But yeah, she's living in his house and he's being all protective and great with her kids. And it definitely doesn't take long for him to wear her down and completely win her over. And I think this is the one to see. I think he has a super protective, like, pet too and everything. But yeah, he's just so protective, like acts of service. He's so kind to her and her kids. And I don't know, it was just so sweet. And I like this one too because he's not angry at her for running out the next morning. I mean, it was a one-night stand. He just, you know, and he also understands why, you know, once he knows about her two kids, and he understands why she doesn't have room in her life for someone else. But it's one of those where pretty immediately he's like, well, I'm willing to commit. Like, I love your kids and I also want more kids with you. And just like that kind of dude where you're like, I really like this guy. I'm feeling the good vibes. I'm feeling all the good things about this dude. So I just really liked him. So it was really fun. All right. Then, you know, I'm being honest, I was really trying not to just be absolutely typical and have this author on here again, because I feel like I always have her on here. But a lot of my 5-star reads were rereads. And you guys know I try not to just have all of those be rereads. You know, if it's one that I haven't read in a really long time, I would put it up there. But truly, I really like this book, and it's one of those again where I think that, well, I'll just show it to you. So I put Into the Fading Twilight up here. Yeah, I did. Also, I just love the audiobooks of these. I think this was good. This was another, like, it was a full cast, but it had Brittany Presley and Sebastian York. I love Sebastian York. And I did receive an ALC from Catherine's team and a physical ARC from Bloom. And I just think they're really well done. Now, what I was about to say is I didn't like it as much as the first one. And I was kind of disappointed about that because I think the setup for this one was so good. Why I didn't like it quite as much was because who the baddie was in this one, while I didn't get who it was right away, there was a certain point where I was like, is it really going to be this person? And I was kind of waiting for the twist of who it was. Whereas in the first one, I feel like there was a twist about who it was. Like, I had no idea who it was in the first one. And I loved how determined the heroine in the first one was to find her friend, and just how she never gave up. And discovering who the baddie was, I had no clue. In this one, I still think she did a pretty good job, me not getting it to a certain point. And it's not that I picked up on it super soon. It's just that once it became clear who it was, I was kind of like, oh, that feels too easy. I don't know. I'm torn because I can't even imagine writing suspense novels. That's why I'm always so impressed when they're super good. But I only took a half a star off, like, when I read this and, like, rated it, because it still had so much of the other stuff that I loved about it. I think their relationship was still really slow burn. I loved his kid. I loved her healing journey. I love his family. Like, I love all that stuff. I just also think that I wanted her to be in, like, therapy. There was just some things that were missing. But overall, it still was really good. And when I was looking at, this is just the ones I like the best of the month. As you could see by what, my ratings were for the month, I had a lot of kind of mid-range books I was reading. And this one does just kind of still stand out. Like, it was still really strong. It had me on the edge of my seat. And she does a really good job with that. And I'm very excited for the next one. So, still sticking really strong. And I still stand by, I feel like her straight to trad ones are doing better and not getting as fruity as some of the previous series where things were getting a little too, like, off in La La Land with, and then boom, the suspense at the end. I think it's really well pushed through it in these. So, looking forward to the next one. Okay, next up, I've danced around it enough. This is the one that isn't a romance. This is the one that is Sunrise on the Reaping, which, I say it with all of these. I talk really in depth about these books in my weekly wrap-ups, and I did the same with this. I had a quirky title for this one that was Weeping at the Reaping. So thank those of you who watched it. I know not everyone was interested in thoughts about this book because I mostly talk about romance, and so I understand that. But this was the one that I read with my friend, at least the first half of it. I was listening to it with Sarah on our trip because I do read books with my friend Sarah now and then when we have the time. It's something we've done since we were children, and now that she is about to have her own child, I don't know that we'll get to do that in the future anymore. But this was a series that I actually read the first 3 books to her when we were young. And I didn't do that with Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I had no desire to read that one to her. But this one, we made it through, like, the first half of it together, and then we finished it alone. But we talked about it then a couple days later, and I did my review of it and everything. And though I won't go into my whole review of it again, you can go and watch my review of it here if you want to. Because I got really angry and I cussed a lot and cried a lot. And then I called my sister and cussed a lot and cried a lot because she's the one who has been hounding me to read this. And I know a lot of you feel a lot of strong feelings about it too. And there's also some people who just straight up refuse to read it. And, you just can't now that you have kids, or you just can't now that you're older and the world feels a little too close to being like this. And it's true, the symbolism just hits you so much more. And sometimes it feels like heavy-handed, and then sometimes you're like, yeah, that's because some parts of it just feel so fucking real that it's disgusting. But yet, she does such a good job with it that it's like, it wouldn't feel so like that if our government didn't make it so. Like, stop being like this then, But yeah, this is Haymitch's Games, and obviously she's writing this in hindsight too, so she can make everything she's written before fit. But there were just parts of this that are almost too painful to read. And, I know I'm going to have to go watch this film with my sister because she'll never let me live it down. In exchange, I may make her go see Wicker with me. I'm like, you know what, you have to go see Wicker with me if you want me to go see Sunrise on the Reaping with you. Let's see if I can get her to do that. I don't know. I might not want to go see Wicker with her. I might want to go see that alone. But anyway, this was just beautifully done. It's so powerful. The audiobook is read by Jefferson White, who was Jimmy on Yellowstone, and he is a fantastic narrator. This book is beautiful. It's poignant. And though it's almost too painful to experience. I also think that the parts that are so brutal, like, it's not being gratuitous. Like, the death of children is happening, has happened, will happen, right? Like, let's make it that way. So it's not pointing at any one place or thing. Like, it happens. And if we look away or ignore it or try to blame it on anyone else, it diminishes us as people. And if we can't even look at it in fiction, what does that say, you know? I think just each person, we have different opinions about what constitutes the death of children too, and what's causing it. And that's where it's really difficult to talk about. So it's fascinating, but it's so hard to call stories like this a favorite. But I mean, it's so powerful, and it was so riveting, and I couldn't stop reading until it was done. So it had to be a favorite. I didn't make this a 6-star though, because I have no reread desire for it. Like, I don't know that I'll reread, like, finishing this, I don't know that I'll ever reread The Hunger Games. And I was talking about that with my sister, because people are reminding me of things, and I've said, like, I don't think people realize, or not people, I mean, like, my sisters reminding me of stuff, and I was like, Elizabeth, I remember everything about The Hunger Games. I read those books at least 10 times each. And she's like, oh, I didn't remember that. And I was like, well, yeah, we didn't talk as much back then, because, you know, your age gap feels bigger when you're, I mean, I read those when I was 18, you know, and my sister was 22, and that age gap feels bigger. She was married already by then. She didn't have her kids yet, but, like, she was married and doing married people stuff. And I was just graduating high school, and we weren't really friends yet, you know? And I was just reading. I mean, I still do that. But, I read these over and over and over and over again. And I don't need to reread them. I literally could tell you what happens in, like, every single chapter. And I had thought when I read this, I was like, maybe it'll make me want to reread Hunger Games. And honestly, it didn't. Because each scene of this that calls back to a scene there, I immediately know it. And it doesn't make me want to reread it, because it's going to hurt even more. But it's very well done. So anyway, it was a favorite of the month, and it is well done. But I don't know that I can ever read it again. So that's why that one's not a 6-star, even though I understand why for so many people, if they have a 6-star system, like ranking system, why it is one. I don't know that I'll ever read that again. I'll barely make it through a film, but I will for my sister and my friends, but I don't know that I will. Okay, on to the last one, but this will be a brief discussion here, because currently this book is an exclusive review. Because this was my Patreon read of July, and currently there is an hour-long review of this on my Patreon. Okay? Yes, this is Without Words by Ellen O'Connell, but I just want to give you a few points on it, because I'm not going to talk about it for an hour here, just a couple minutes. So I feel like my hour-long thoughts on my Patreon are still exclusive enough. And at some point, one of the tropes having to do with this will come up, and I'll be able to recommend it in a video and talk about it there. And I'm still debating that this is a 6-star or not. But I think it sits at a 5. I don't know. Like, I'm still going back and forth. But it for sure is my favorite of the month. Like, I put this on my Battle of the Books as a favorite of the month, because it was so well done. But yeah, this is a bounty hunter and a widow. And this bounty hunter, Brett, has arrived to collect Hassie's stepson. And Hassie's stepson is helping her bury her husband, and then the stepson pulls a gun on the bounty hunter has to kill him. And Hassie is now, like, she is starving, her animals are starving, her husband is dead, her stepson is dead, the bounty hunter needs to take her stepson for proof to get his payday, and he looks at this woman she is mute because of a childhood injury. There's something happened to her throat, she can't talk, she has no money, and he feels bad, and he's very inconvenienced that he feels bad, but the man does have a conscience. He is a Northern Civil War veteran, and he works during the summers as a bounty hunter to make money to send to his Confederate family, who isn't doing so well since the war is over. They consider him a traitor. He considers them stuck in the past, but he feels guilty for reasons that are his own. I won't get into all of those because, again, I'm keeping this review short. But he ends up being willing to take her to the closest town, try to find work for her, try to set her up good. He's going to help her sell what meager possession she has to get her a little bit of money, because he knows if he leaves her there, she'll die, or someone will come along to raid what's left of the farm, and he just doesn't want any more death on his conscience. He just can't take that. But upon trying to help her out, other people just suck. That's the thing about Ellen O'Connell books. And I mean, I know it's not just her. It can be in any story, but particularly in the West or in historical stories, like, people just suck. And just nobody's willing to give Hassie a fair shake. And so Brett keeps trying to pass her off to someone else, and they just apparently can't see that she is intelligent, and she, just because she can't speak, it doesn't mean she doesn't have something to say or have intelligent thoughts in her head, and she can communicate with writing. She also knows sign language, but nobody else does, and nobody cared to learn, and so she hasn't spoken with anyone really since her mother died, because he learns too that her husband who died wasn't literate. So yeah, she was living with that guy for how long without being able to communicate with him. So that's disturbing. So just all these things he starts learning about her. But eventually, let's just skip along a little bit, because again, to keep it quick, eventually, she starts bounty hunting with him. He says, you can bounty hunt with me, because again, some things happen where she proves herself very useful to him through a few different ways. Her and her dog actually, save his life a couple times, because, people may say things around someone who they know is mute, thinking that just because they're mute, they're also deaf, because people are stupid and ignorant, and ableist, as we all say things around her. And before he knows it, he owes her his life. And when he sees how shitty people are, he's like, well, you gotta learn to shoot. We gotta get you some pants, and you can travel with me for the summer. But in the winter, I go home to my family, and we'll have to find a place for you to stay. But you can earn some money. I'll split the bounties with you, and we'll see what happens. But then, after a couple of different towns that they go to, of people judging them for being a man and a woman traveling together, they end up getting conveniently married at a church in town, and now, we're married only for convenience sake, and, well, they're going to get annulled at the end of the summer, don't you know? Until that doesn't last very long either, and then they're in love, and it goes from there. So anyway, this story was amazing, even though it sucks at many points along the way. Again, Ellen O'Connell. I will say, if you read Eyes of Silver, Eyes of Gold off of my recommendation, this is the one that many people start with before that, or they've read because they've read that one. And it has been recommended to me for years. It was the one I read for, like I said, for Patreon this month, because the theme was just historical romance. And it's been recommended to me for Marriage of Convenience, for there's a couple other times, but point is, this one's, there's been a couple patrons who've been wanting me to read this one for a long time, and I'm so glad it finally won, because like so often, I understand this cover is not great, although it is better than Eyes of Silver, Eyes of Gold. We have to admit, this is a nicer one, She does wear this dress and hat at some point in the story, by the way. And he's just in shadow, but at least they look like people instead of the weird, awkward shape that's on the cover of Eyes of Silver, Eyes of Gold. But please, if you like historical romance, you like historical Western, you like reading about mute characters with sign language being used, or okay, let me give you this one too. If you would like to read Rip Wheeler as a bounty hunter with a little bit of a softer heart, this is your guy. Like, there were multiple times where I was like, I mean, this is Rip Wheeler as a bounty hunter. Like, he really felt like it. Hassie is not a Beth. She's not. But he absolutely read like a Rip Wheeler who's a bounty hunter. Absolutely. Who's a veteran. Like, that's, yeah, he's a veteran. He has PTSD. The dog will wake him up sometimes from his nightmares. Like, it was great. So anyway, again, if you would like my full hour-long review, it is available on my Patreon. If you do the free 1-week trial, you'll be able to watch my review there, including, I believe now we're up to almost 50 other reviews that I have there as well that you can check out. So there you go. Yeah. Thank you so much for watching this. I appreciate y'all so much. Again, if you made it to the end, hopefully you enjoyed this. Please give this a like. Please leave a sunflower down below, or just any type of emoji, or comment what your favorite read was, just to give this some interaction, because again, that's what YouTube's looking for right now, and I could really use that for me. So thank you so much for watching, friends. If you would like any of these books that I've talked about, I will put a link down below to those. I'll have the weekly wrap-ups linked up here. And again, remember, the San Mariano vlog will be coming on Thursday. And yeah, we'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.